Hello, New Mexico, and welcome to the latest episode of Around the Roundhouse, the New Mexicans podcast featuring the policies, politics, and personalities of the state capitol during the 60-day session. My name is Daniel Chacón, and I'm the state government reporter for the New Mexican. Every week, my colleagues and I will be bringing you, and have been bringing you, the latest news and information from the Roundhouse, as well as recapping the highlights and sharing interviews with key political figures. Our guest this week is Deb Haaland, a former congresswoman and interior secretary who formally announced her run for governor of New Mexico this week. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
So, as you may or may not remember, I actually bumped into you at the state capitol on the first day of the 60-day session here in Santa Fe. What's it like to be back in New Mexico?
I love New Mexico so much. I love being back in the sunshine here. And of course, eating at some of my favorite restaurants. And so that's the thing, right? You come to New Mexico because we have red and green chili, and it's pretty amazing.
I actually follow you on Twitter, and I noticed that you're kind of a pro in the kitchen. You make bizcochitos, you make tamales. I might have to go to your house one of these days.
You'd be welcome to, of course. Yes, I learned to cook from my grandmother, but my mom and my grandmother and my auntie, they all cooked. My grandfather would grow the food and he'd bring it to her and she would process all. She'd make her own hominy. She'd bake her own bread. So I learned at an early age how to cook, and I really love New Mexico food.
Right on. Deb, I'm going to ask you a question that you've probably already heard a million times and that I'm sure you'll hear a million times more. Why are you running for governor, and what qualifications do you bring to the table?
Thanks so much for the question. And of course, I'm running for governor because people are struggling right now. That's what I'm hearing. Folks are, it's hard for them to make ends meet. I know, and I know what that feels like. I struggled too. I raised my kid as a single mom in Albuquerque. I didn't know if I could pay rent and buy food in the same month. And of course, I'm still today paying off my student loans, but add on top of the struggle trying to pay your student loan debt, and it gets to be really, really hard. So I feel very confident that my lived experience combined with the leadership experience that I've gained both in Congress and at the Department of the Interior is why I am ready and qualified to be New Mexico's next governor.
As you just indicated, you've been very candid about your personal struggles, whether it be from being a single mom to relying on food stamps at one point in your life to your sobriety. And I'm curious how those experiences have shaped who you are today and also informed your political worldview.
Of course, sure. Well, yes, I think it's, I think it's helpful. If you're running for office, you should know and understand the struggles that people are going through, right? I can identify with those, and I know, and I think I can be empathetic, but I also can think about ways to find the solutions to those issues, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I tell folks, I wish I had all the bank fees that through the years that I spent on when my account was overdrafted. It's very difficult to not have money and try to navigate through your everyday life. So I feel very strongly that New Mexicans, we can all help each other. And here we have very strong communities. And I want to see the best of New Mexico when I'm out there. I also want to hear how people think they can move our state forward. Right now, mm-hmm. It's hard sometimes to live, but we still have that spirit here in New Mexico, that culture, our traditions that we rely on. And so I'm really anxious to get out there and listen to everyone and then, let's all move forward together.
Well, on that topic, you announced this week a statewide tour to listen to New Mexicans and learn about their struggles and ideas for solutions that fit their communities. I'm from rural northern New Mexico, so I always advocate for my gente. How can rural New Mexicans make their voices heard in your campaign?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I love northern New Mexico, and I have spent so much time up there, and northern New Mexico will be part of this first tour. And of course, I'm sure we'll travel there many times between now and November of 2026. But sure, we'll advertise where we'll be and what times, and we hope that folks will sign up. We want people to be a part of this campaign, and I really want to connect with folks everywhere in northern New Mexico, in northeastern New Mexico, and southern New Mexico. Anybody can go to debhaaland.com. They can sign up to get notices from our campaign, and I really hope that they'll do that. And that way we know how to reach out to them and how to get them the information of where we'll be.
Deb, after you formally announced your candidacy for governor, the Republican Party of New Mexico said you had one of the most liberal voting records in Congress. I wanted to ask you, is that true? And besides being branded a far-left liberal, where do you think the anti-Deb Haaland crowd will go on the attack? Where do you think that they might see openings for criticism as you run for governor?
Sure, I understand that. And so what they forgot to say, Daniel, is that I was also one of the most bipartisan members of Congress in my class of 2018. I passed legislation that was passed by both houses and signed into law by Donald Trump, because those pieces of legislation that I filed and worked hard to get passed were bipartisan. So I know how to work across the aisle. And look, I am ready to solve the problems for every single New Mexico across our beautiful state, and I will ask anyone to join me in making sure that that's how we move our state forward. I'm ready to be in the fight. I'm ready to make the positive change that we need here in New Mexico.
Do you see, given your career in public service, do you see any areas where they will come after you? Are there areas where you might feel there might be some weaknesses?
Well, as we know, we live in a very divisive time politically, and I feel sad about that, because I think in a state like New Mexico, so many things should not be partisan, right? We should all care about our communities together. We should all find ways that we can move our communities forward. And so I will say that my job as a candidate for governor of New Mexico will be to bring people together. My job, if I am so fortunate to win in 2026, will be to bring people together. So no matter where I am, that's what I will strive to do, is to bring people together, because the issues that we're facing right here in New Mexico, but certainly across the country, they are not going to be solved by one person. All of us need to come together and work together to make sure that we can lower the cost of living, lower the cost of rent, and help people to be able to afford, like I couldn't afford before, rent and food in the same month. Finding ways to help people to, be able to go see a doctor when they're sick, and make sure that their children, that they can attend their children's graduation from public high school. I also want to say that everybody in New Mexico should really want to feel safe. And the way we do that is we talk to each other, we have those conversations, we work together, and that's what I'm ready to do.
And, you just spoke about housing affordability, which is an issue that you talked about in your campaign launch video. Everyone agrees it's one of our biggest problems in the state, and talks more in platitudes really about how housing is too expensive, but we really never really hear many specifics, or not much seems to get done. What are your ideas to tackle the issue of housing affordability in New Mexico?
Of course. Yes, of course. Well, it's true that we need more houses, right? We need more affordable houses for people to actually live in. And I will just say that the leadership coming out of the White House in Washington, D.C., with all the talk of adding tariffs and all of these things, I don't think the president is focused on lowering costs for New Mexicans. He's certainly not focused on lowering costs for anyone across the United States. So these are things that we're going to have to really work hard to defend, right? We need to make sure that that costs to build houses initially are affordable for people. So I'm going to, as I mentioned, as I'm going around the state listening to New Mexicans, I want to hear their ideas too. But we need to increase the number of affordable housing units. That means supporting the programs that provide those houses for people who really need the help.
And so will that take government intervention basically to help get more affordable housing units in New Mexico?
Well, absolutely. Look, government can be a force for good. Mm-hmm. And we need to make sure that government works for the people of New Mexico. And that certainly includes the federal government. The federal government is so helpful to people. We just need to make sure that we're doing our part to steer it in the right direction. And I'm going to be a voice for all of the people here in New Mexico.
Deb, if I may, I'd like to ask you about Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's tenure as governor. What do you like about what Lujan Grisham has done? And is there anything that you either disagree with or are disappointed hasn't gotten done?
Well, first of all, let me say this. Governor Lujan Grisham came into office and, several months later, we were in the throes of a really terrible pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. And I think her job shifted from how can we move New Mexico forward to how can we keep New Mexicans safe? It was a really trying time, not just here, but across the country. I was a congresswoman at that time, and things were pretty much shut down across the country. So I do want to applaud the governor for keeping our state safe, for helping us weather that really terrible storm. And then, of course, I think she's done a wonderful job of helping communities that were really, hit by those terrible fires. And so I applaud her for the work that she has done. But look, I just want to say, we're two different people. Mm-hmm. Our paths are different. Our journeys have been different. We're two different people. I will always have respect for our elected officials. I'm running for governor because I feel like I have some ideas that I want to share, and I want to help move New Mexico forward, and with the help of New Mexicans across our beautiful state.
You touched on President Trump earlier, and I wanted to ask you your position on immigration, mass deportation, and a border wall. Where do you stand?
So I am really saddened by the fact that this president has instilled such horrible fear in communities, not just in New Mexico, but across the country. Our immigrant communities in New Mexico, they deserve dignity. They deserve to be treated with dignity. They deserve to be treated with respect. It does no one any good when children are afraid to go to school, when parents are afraid to go to work. And quite frankly, because of all of the fear that President Trump has ginned up over the entire country, Native Americans were being approached by by federal law enforcement agencies to produce their citizenship papers and so forth. So I just want to, make sure that we are protecting our communities. Governors around this country will be on the front line protecting our citizens from this really terrible chaos that the president has caused and all the terrible decisions that are coming out of the White House.
I know our time is limited. I have just a couple last questions, if you'll bear with me. The one that I really wanted to ask you before we end our conversation is, do you continue to oppose oil drilling near Chaco Canyon, and would you push to restrict drilling in other parts of the state?
So I will say that Chaco Canyon is a sacred place to many Native American tribes. and quite frankly, it is a beautiful gem and certainly a source of pride for every single New Mexican who lives in our state. And I'll tell you what I've told many people: some places are too special to drill.
Mm-hmm.
The withdrawal that happened around Chaco Canyon, it took place only on federal lands. It didn't, it wasn't a land grab. It didn't take anyone's land. But we need to protect our sacred places, because in the face of climate change, some of those places, they are in jeopardy. So yes, I stand by my decision to protect Chaco. And I think that we can, just protect these beautiful places, because it's for future generations.
Yes, ma'am. Last thing here. I told my Twitter followers that I was scheduled to interview you. And again, thank you so much for spending time with me. I know you've got a busy schedule. But when I asked for suggestions for questions, sort of one of the common themes was around education and how you would improve student outcomes in New Mexico. But there was also another question that I thought was curious. Someone wanted to know what your favorite Taylor Swift song is.
That's very kind of you. My favorite Taylor Swift song, way back when Taylor Swift was very young, my child listened to Taylor Swift a lot, and there's a song, I think it's called "The Best Day," and me and my child, we would listen to that song and tell each other we had the best day ever, because we spent, it was wonderful spending time together.
Right on. What about just last thing here on education? How you would improve student outcomes?
Let's help move our students forward. I want every single student in New Mexico to be successful. I want them all to graduate from high school. I want us all to support our public schools. There's lots of work for us to do. I want to say that moving around in a military family, I went to 13 public schools before I graduated from Highland High School in the southeast Albuquerque. And so I know that we can be a leader in education, and I really am going to work hard to see that happen.
Deb, anything I'm missing to ask you, anything you'd like to add before the conclusion of our interview?
Yep, I'll just tell people to go to debhaaland.com, DebHaaland.com, and see what we're up to and sign up to be a part of our campaign.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to working with you on the campaign trail.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye now.
All righty, bye-bye. We'll take a quick break and discuss some of the highlights of the fourth week of the session and look ahead at what's to come in week 5.
This is Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Looking to reach a wider audience and grow your business? For 175 years, the Santa Fe New Mexican has been the trusted voice of Santa Fe, with unmatched local reach in print and online. In addition to our long-standing, independent, family-owned newspaper, we have a full-fledged marketing team with the expertise to help you succeed in the 21st century. From traditional print to precision-targeted digital advertising, we have the tools to connect you with your ideal customers. Partner with us and see the results for yourself. Advertise with the Santa Fe New Mexican and unlock your business's full potential. Visit us at santafenewmexican.com/advertising or call us at 505-995-3852. Thank you.
We're back with Around the Roundhouse. I'm your host, Daniel Chacón. One of the big stories of week 4 was the passage in the House Agriculture, Acequias, and Water Resources Committee of House Bill 137. This bill would establish what is being called a strategic water supply in New Mexico. The initiative, which has the backing of Governor Lujan Grisham, would treat brackish water and hydraulic fracturing byproducts for industrial uses. But it's not a done deal. The bill narrowly passed its first committee hearing and still faces a long road ahead. The bill is among hundreds the legislature will likely consider in the weeks ahead. Speaking of bills, Tuesday was State Transportation Day at the state capitol, and New Mexico's Transportation Secretary, Ricky Serna, unveiled 2 pieces of legislation that will affect motorists across New Mexico. The first, House Bill 145, would give the State Transportation Commission the authority to issue up to $1.5 billion in bonds for road construction projects over a 10-year period.
And so the great thing about the legislation is that authority presents the commission with options that they can exercise as the agency's financial position allows for that debt service.
And is the idea for road projects just across New Mexico?
Absolutely. And so the department uses a very technical process through which roadways are prioritized for safety, for pavement conditions, even for economic development. Bridge conditions are major, congestion, volume. And so it's that process that our district engineers and senior engineers use to identify which roads need to move to the top of the priority list first.
The second bill, Senate Bill 241, would authorize the New Mexico Department of Transportation to place automated speed enforcement cameras in construction zones.
So historically, the State Transportation Commission has the ability to grant permission to local governments to place automated speed enforcement cams on our roads, but we couldn't do that ourselves. And there was never an interest until we started to see with two recent projects what speeding in work zones is doing to our worker safety, our contractor safety, and our infrastructure safety. And so meeting with our industry partners, we worked with the governor to identify that this is a must-have. And so it's about saving lives, it's about protecting our infrastructure.
Cerna said cameras have been proven to reduce speeding by 60% and crashes by up to 30%. He said the bill is aimed at protecting construction workers in the field. New Mexico's Public Safety Secretary, Jason Bowie, said the speed cameras would not only save lives, but free up precious law enforcement resources.
This is really just about saving lives. Over the last 5 years, law enforcement has issued 13,000 speeding citations in construction zones across New Mexico. 13,000 where workers and motorists are at risk due to high speed. Automatic traffic enforcement really helps us free up those law enforcement resources, and this is something we've been looking at in the Department of Public Safety overall. We're looking at where can we take technology, or where can we take professional staff and replace the police officers so they can be released back into the community to address public safety issues.
Committees in both chambers of the legislature are continuing to hear a slew of bills, some of which are already making their way to the floor for third reading. As always, the New Mexican will be there to bring you the latest news and developments. Thanks again to Deb Haaland for joining us, and thank you for listening to Around the Roundhouse. Join us each week as we share the latest from the Capitol by subscribing to our podcast through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. The New Mexican has a devoted team of reporters and photographers at the Roundhouse each day during the 60-day session to provide you with the latest developments. Follow our coverage online at SantaFeNewMexican.com, where you can also subscribe to our political newsletter, The Roundhouse Report, for updates sent directly to your inbox. Until next time, I'm Daniel Chacón, and this has been Around the Roundhouse.